Hello, so today we're going to continue with some of our labs, and today we're going to focus on the male reproduction lab, and so we're going to do all the structures of the male. I'm going to talk to you just a few minutes and kind of explain some physiology and then go through and show you some of the structures on the models. Okay, so this is going to be kind of a lecture and lab so that as we talk about the anatomical structures, you understand what they do. So some of this material is actually going to be included on the lecture material when you think about what it does and how it does it, okay? So the lab part will be the actual model pictures, and the lecture portion you may see on your lecture exam. All right, so it's kind of hard to talk about the physiology if you don't understand the anatomy, so we're going to kind of do these at the same time. I do have a, let me see. Okay, I do have a list of structures that you're responsible for on the anatomy portion of the test. So again, as you're reading through the notes and I kind of talk to you about what it does, expect that on the lecture portion. In this portion, you'll expect these structures will be on the lab portion. So I'm doing it a little bit differently than I've kind of done it in the past. Reproduction is just kind of complicated, so I feel like I need to do a little more lecture today explaining that. All right, so let me move forward. So this is a reference point, so as I'm talking about the physiology, let me just kind of basically do the anatomy, and then we'll go into more detail later on about individual parts that you can understand as I show you the model pictures. Okay, so when you think about the male reproductive system, all right, so you have to remember that one of the differences between the males and the females is in the male, you have an organ, this is the penis, this blue organ here, and it's used both for reproduction and urination. So it's the copulatory organ. But that's not the gonad. That's not really what makes males males. What makes males males is having the gonad, having the testes, right, which is where the sperm are made. So I need you to just kind of memorize this picture briefly as we talk about it so that you kind of know, and kind of this visualization as I talk through these different structures. Understand what the penis is, okay? Understand that it's got a tube that runs through it called the urethra, and the urethra is both for semen ejaculation and also for urine to leave the body. Here's your bladder, so you can see that this urethra comes from the bladder somewhere. You can't really see it. Through here, down into the urethra. You have some what we call accessory organs that are involved in making semen, which is the fluid that sperm have to swim in during ejaculation. You have some glands here called seminal vesicles. You have a bulbourethral gland. You have this tube here, this long tube here. This is how the sperm get from the testes to the penis, to the urethra, called the vas deferens or ductus deferens. You have the epididymis, which is this little storage area, which is where sperm are stored after they're made. And then, of course, in the testis, this is where the sperm are made. So those are kind of the basic parts. So let's talk about what those do, so you kind of have a visualization, and you might even want to print this picture out and kind of have it beside you as we walk through these different structures. And then we'll do detail and really get you sure of where all these things are on the anatomy and on the model pictures. Okay? So this may be a little long video, and I do apologize for that, but you just got to get through it somehow. All right, so when we think about the male, we want to talk about external genitalia. That includes the scrotum and the penis, so what you can see from the outside. So again, the penis is the male copulatory organ used for intercourse, used for delivery of sperm. It's also part of the urinary system. It's how urine exits the body as well. The penis has several parts. It has a root and a shaft that ends in a glans penis, and I'm going to point all these out to you in a little bit. It also has a covering called a foreskin or a prepuce, and so if you're circumcised, you won't have it. If you're not circumcised, you will. There's a crura, which is the proximal end. It's kind of the anchor, hold the penis to the body, I guess you could say. You have some erectile tissues. You have what are called the corpus spongiosum and corpus cavernosum. And so when I say erectile, what that means during an erection is the tissues are going to fill with blood, which allows the penis to become erect and stiff and rigid. So there's basically two erectile tissues that fill with blood. The cavernosa, which are going to be paired, there's two of them, they kind of give the rigidity to the penis. Whereas the spongiosum, it actually surrounds the urethra and forms the glans penis, which is the end or the head of the penis. And its job is not only as far as erection is concerned, it allows the urethra not to get squished. And so you'll see that as I show you that anatomy. So again, I'm just kind of talking through some of these terms so that when I show you what they are, you'll understand. When we talk about the scrotum, it's actually two sacs, left and a right, and each one contains a testis. And it's just basically a sac of skin that is below the abdominal pelvic cavity, so it hangs outside the body. And that purpose is so that the temperature is a little bit lower. So instead of being 98.6, it's going to be more like 96, 97 degrees, which is better for sperm production. So the testes need to be outside the body for the sperm to be produced most efficiently. There's two muscles that play a role in temperature control, and I'll show you the dartos and cremaster muscle and kind of show you how they work. Within the scrotum, this is where the sperm are made, and we're going to talk a little bit about the actual arterial and venous blood supply to the testis. If you think about, we need these to be cooler. I'm going to show you kind of how you have your own air conditioning system, the way the arteries and the veins are arranged inside the testis, and it's called a venous plexus, and I'll show you how that works. I'm going to show you the tunics that surround the testis, which basically allow for protection and to give the form to the testis. You have a tunica vaginalis and a tunica albuginea, which again just give form and protection to the individual testes. Each testis is going to be divided into lobes called which contain seminiferous tubules, which is where the actual sperm are made. So I'm going to show you what those look like. And I'm going to explain to you what the spermatic cord is. A lot of people think the spermatic cord is maybe the tube that the sperm leave from, and that's not true. It's kind of a misnomer, really. So the spermatic cord is really just a group of tissues, including nerves and blood vessels and lymphatics, and also the tube that carries the sperm, kind of all together, that hangs outside the body. So I'll explain what that looks like. We're going to get into detail about the seminiferous tubules and the different parts of them. So if you're looking, so let's imagine the penis will be right here, the testis is kind of hanging down. So this is inside the testis, and if you look, it's got these lobules, and then these little wiggly lines are the seminiferous tubules. And so we're going to look at at an individual seminiferous tubule. So here we have a seminiferous tubule that we're looking at in cross-section. When you start to learn about spermatogenesis and how sperm are made, you're going to learn how the sperm kind of start out around the inside, and they go through their various divisions, and then the mature sperm are going to be delivered into the lumen. All right, so we're going to talk about your sustentacular cells and some of the myeloid cells and how they work to squeeze the sperm into the lumen. And we're also going to talk, in your physiology portion, you should learn about these interstitial endocrine cells, which are found between the seminiferous tubules, and their role in making estrogens and testosterone. So when we look at the seminiferous tubules, so here's one here, and we're going to do this again a little bit later. We're also going to talk about the cells between there. So again, I'm just trying to set this up so that when I start pointing out things on the anatomy, you have a reference you can go back to for some additional notes. I'm going to talk about the epididymis, which is where the sperm are stored. So these are going to be non-motile sperm. They're not quite mature. They're ready to go. They just have to be turned on, and that's going to happen during ejaculation. So this is where the sperm are going to be stored for several months until it's time for them to be ejaculated into the vas deferens or the ductus deferens. Vas deferens is the old term. I still tend to say that. So the ductus deferens is the actual tube that carries sperm from the epididymis out to the urethra. So we're going to cover that. It actually joins some other structures along the way, especially the seminal vesicle, to form something called the ejaculatory duct. So if you're thinking you've got to make the semen, which is the fluid part or the liquid part of the semen, some of that's coming from the seminal vesicle. So obviously the sperm and fluid have to come together somewhere, and so they come together at the ejaculatory duct. We're going to talk about some other accessory organs besides the seminal vesicles, because again, these make some of the semen. There are also some bulbourethral glands, there's a prostate, and again, all of these contribute to the fluid part of the semen. Okay. All right, so let's kind of start talking about some of the anatomy. We'll start with the urethra here, and then we're going to move in and really start to talk about these different individual parts. So we know what the urethra is. It's the tube that carries urine from the bladder to the outside, right? And so in the male, so here's your bladder, and so the urethra is this tube that goes right through here. It has three regions, because at some points it's going to carry it carries semen, and at some points it carries urine. So understanding these regions, it kind of helps you understand what the function of this whole organ is. So when urine is made in the bladder, okay, then you're going to have urine just travel through the penis to the outside, and it has to pass first through the prostatic urethra, because this organ here is called the prostate. Okay, then it's going to pass through the membranous or intermediate part of the urethra, which is the part of the urethra, right here. I'm sorry, kind of made my line too big. Through here, which is kind of the membranous urethra, kind of the intermediate, so it's between the prostate and then the shaft. And so if you look at this part, the urethra that is actually in the shaft part of the penis is called the spongy urethra. So again, so understanding the different parts of the urethra. So when I say this is where this particular part of the semen enters into the urethra, if I say it enters into this prostatic urethra, or the intermediate membranous part of the urethra, or the spongy urethra, you know where we're talking about. So we divide that urethra into three parts, kind of a top, a middle, and a bottom. So again, the prostatic urethra is going through the prostate. The membranous urethra is going through kind of what you might call the root, where it's still inside the body. And then the spongy urethra is going to go through the shaft, and it's going to be surrounded by erectile tissues. Okay? All right, so let's do some details. Let's really start going over some of these different anatomical parts. All right, so let's just start here. So we have the scrotum, which is the sac, okay? And inside, which is a fleshy sac, and we've got some muscles I'm going to do a little detail about. Inside the scrotum, you have the actual testis, and we're going to cut that open a little bit and look inside. This is where the sperm are made. As the sperm are made, they're going to travel and be stored into this comma-shaped organ called the epididymis. All right. Then the sperm, and I'm going to do this kind of thinking about how sperm travel through the system. I think that's one of the best ways to learn the anatomy. As the sperm are ejaculated, they enter into this pink tube here, and they go up and over the bladder to the back side. That is your ductus deferens. Okay. At the back side of the bladder, this is your bladder, you get this kind of widened area called the ampulla of the ductus deferens, and this is the seminal vesicle. Okay, so where the seminal vesicle and the ampulla, they come together. This is where you're going to start adding some of that fluid to the semen, and they form this little structure here called the ejaculatory duct. All right, then it's going to go through the prostate. This yellow organ here is the prostate. All right, it's going to pass through the prostate, because you've got your prostatic urethra entering into your membranous or intermediate urethra. And then you've got this little gland here called the bulbourethral gland. And if you've learned anything yet about male reproduction, you'll find out the bulbourethral gland makes a lubricant. And so a lot of times prior to ejaculation, the bulbourethral gland will actually send a lubricant through the urethra, and that basically works to lubricate, because it'll actually go to the outside, which is the glans penis. It'll help lubricate the penis and also kind of wash out any remaining urine so that you don't have to worry about the urine killing the sperm. So that's the bulbourethral gland. So its contents will enter into the urethra here. So then the urethra will pass all the way through the penis to the outside. So looking at the penis, you've got this wide part at the base. That's called the glans. If the skin is still on it, it's called the prepuce, or the foreskin. If you've been circumcised, it's not there. And if you'll notice on this particular model, you've got two shades of blue. You've got kind of this densely dotted blue, and then this kind of this stripy blue. So the stripy blue is the corpus cavernosum, which is going to be the erectile tissues. There's two of them. And then the corpus spongiosum is going to be the one that surrounds the urethra itself and makes the glans. Okay, so we've really talked about all of those different parts of the anatomy. We're going to do it in a little more detail and show you a few more pictures. I also want to make sure you understand where you are in the male anatomy. This is going to be the last part of the large intestine, called the rectum, and then of course you have the exit point, which is called the anus. So big differences between males and females. In the males and females, you both have a rectum, you both have an anus. In the female, there's a vaginal opening, which is to the reproductive tract, and there's a urethral opening to the urinary tract, whereas in the male, there's the anus, and then you have the urethra, which is both reproduction and urinary. Okay, so big difference between males and females. Just one of many differences between males and females. Here's another picture, and you're probably like, oh, goodness, yes, that's an erect penis, and the reason I show you that is because that's anatomic position, all right? So remember, we talk about anatomic position and, you know, looking forward, hands forward. So in reproduction for the male, it's with an erect penis. So that's important, because if you were to write on a physical note that you had a lesion, let's say you found a spot or maybe an STD, a sexually transmitted disease, some kind of a papule or something that you might find, and you wanted to put whether or not it was on the dorsal or ventral side so that you would know what side it's on. So when you're talking about the penis, it's in the erect position. So this would be the ventral side, and the back side is the dorsal side. So again, you have to remember it's a little different. It's in the, when you talk about male reproduction, then the erect penis would be the anatomic position when you're getting your direction terms. All right, so this is going to be this wide area. This is the glans, okay, and this is the foreskin, or the prepuce. It hasn't been taken off in a circumcised, this is not an uncircumcised male. This long area, this is called the shaft of the penis. All right, we have the two testes surrounded by a scrotum. So the scrotum is really divided into two parts. There's actually a septum that divides the scrotum into a left and a right. And that's also a nice function, because it helps protect the two. So if there was a disease in one side, it actually won't cross to the other side. It kind of isolates the two testes from each other. So that's kind of an interesting thing about the male reproductive tract. There's separation between the two sides. The spermatic cord. So here is the spermatic cord coming out, coming from the abdominal pelvic cavity down into the scrotum, and here we've cut it away, and so you can see that you've got vasculature. There's a testicular artery, and then you've got some nerves, and then you've got these veins. And so notice how these veins form a plexus that kind of surround the artery. So remember, I told you that the testes need to be cooler, so they're going to hang outside the body. Well, as that warm arterial blood is coming down from the body, and this cooler venous blood is coming back up, so you have this warm arterial blood passing through this cooler venous blood. That helps cool the blood before it hits the testis, and also keeps them cooler. So it's kind of like a little air conditioner. I just think that's cool. Form follows function. Let's see, what else do I need to cover on this one? Oh, again, we have that covering, that white covering, that tunic. That's the tunica albuginea. And I said I would mention the muscles. So you have a dartos muscle, which is here, this little white tissue here, and it surrounds kind of part of the scrotum. And so what it does, when it contracts, it kind of makes the scrotum real wrinkly, but that allows it to be insulated. So if you need to warm up the testis, the dartos muscle will contract and kind of bring the testis closer to the body and help warm it up. The cremaster muscle, that's this large muscle, it actually will elevate the testis. So it will cause the testes to raise and lower, again, based on temperature. So if a male is cold, like on a cold, windy day, the dartos muscle and cremaster muscle may contract and pull it closer to the body so that the testes don't get too cold. On a really hot day, they may both relax and allow the testes to cool off. So that's the job of those two muscles. Again, with this particular anatomy, you may see some diagrams on the exam, so I'm going to kind of do it both ways. This is just another view where we've isolated everything out to look at it one more time. I like this. This is a cross section of the penis, and so you can see the erectile tissues. And so when you talk about the corpus spongiosum, that's going to be this bottom one. Looks kind of like a smiley face. Okay, so you want to think about the mouth of the smiley face is the corpus spongiosum, and the urethra is right in the middle. So that corpus spongiosum will engorge and then keep the urethra from being squished and closed by the other erectile tissues, which are your corpora cavernosa. Now, corpus is singular and corpora is two. All right, so depending on if you're talking about both of the corpora cavernosa, you would say corpora. If you're talking about just one of them, you would say corpus. But, don't get too freaked out about that, but that's why sometimes you see it say corpora cavernosa versus corpus cavernosa. So you can see you have two of these, and they each have a vessel inside. So when the blood flows, it will cause those tissues to engorge. You can notice that the corpus spongiosum forms the glans penis and just runs right alongside the urethra, whereas the corpora cavernosa are on either side. Here again is the testis and the epididymis. You have your long vas deferens. Here's the ampulla of the vas deferens joining the seminal vesicle. They're going to enter into the urethra here, surrounded by the prostate gland. Here are your bulbourethral glands. Okay, so again, just a different view of the anatomy. All right, let's zoom in to the testis itself. So you have your tunica vaginalis, which is this external layer, and then you have the internal tunica albuginea, and then it's divided into these lobes. Okay, and inside these lobes you have your seminiferous tubules here. This is where the sperm are made. So the sperm are going to be produced here. They're going to travel into this structure here called the epididymis. Okay, and in the epididymis, this is where they are going to stay until ejaculation occurs. All right, so if you look, it says this is the head of the epididymis, kind of this wide part, the top of the comma, and then the narrow part is the tail. Okay, and then the sperm are going to leave the epididymis and travel through the ductus deferens into this large spermatic cord, which includes the blood vessels, the nerves, lymphatics, and the vas deferens. All right, so looking at the models. Okay, so let's find all these things. Okay, so this is the male. Here we have our gonadal artery and vein coming down. We have our ureter. Remember, ureter comes from the bladder. Here's our bladder here. Okay. Looking from the front side, here's the penis. This is going to be the glans. This will be the shaft of the penis. Here's your spermatic cord. You can see the artery and the venous plexus going around it. You can see part of the epididymis. You can see the testis itself. On this model over here, you have a side view. Again, here is the ureter coming down. Here is the penis again with the glans penis. You have the bladder here. You have the testis. You have the epididymis, and then here the sperm will leave and go through the ductus deferens. It goes up through the spermatic cord, around and over the bladder, where it joins the ampulla here and the seminal vesicles, and they're going to come together. It's kind of hard to see on that particular model. I've got a better one. So remember let's go back to this picture. So so you can kind of get this in your mind. The ampulla is going to be medial. Okay, so if you're kind of lost and you're trying to figure out the ampulla versus the seminal glands, the ampullas are the medial glands, or the medial bulges that you see. So you would see the ampulla would be kind of here, and the seminal glands are going to be there. This purple thing is the prostate. Okay, so I've got some more pictures just to kind of give you more ideas on how to be tested. Again, this would be the scrotum. You can't see the testis because it's still covered in flesh. You can see basically the spermatic cord, and the cremaster muscle is being shown here. And you can see the shaft of the penis and the glands. That's going to be the bladder. Here's another cutaway, a little different model. So you have your rectum and your anus. Here's the bladder here. You have the urethra, prostatic urethra, intermediate or membranous urethra, out the spongy urethra all the way out to the outside. You have your prostate gland. This is your ejaculatory duct right here. You have your corpus spongiosum surrounding the urethra, and the cavernosa here. Okay, so just again a different way of looking at it. And again, another model. We have several models, so I wanted to just show you as many as I could. So again, you have your prostate here, your bladder, the urethra, corpus spongiosum, and corpus cavernosa with the glands. This is a really good picture. It's kind of blown up so I can show you a little bit more detail. When you look at the bladder here, you can see the urethra coming through. Here's the ejaculatory duct. Here's the prostate. This is the bulbal urethral gland. Okay, so it's going to enter into the urethra. Here again are those erectile tissues, corpus spongiosum, and then the blue is the corpus cavernosa. I also want to talk about the root and the crust. So let me go back to this particular picture here. Let me see if I can erase that. Whoops. You know how you get to talk and realize you forgot to say something? Yeah. Just it's what happens in lab too. I'll be teaching and go, oh, I forgot to tell you all that. So the way the penis is connected, so if you want to think about the penis, it's actually got three parts. I need to mention that. You have the glands, I've mentioned that. You have the body or the shaft, which is the part that you see kind of from the outside. Well, it's got to be held onto the body somehow, and so we call that the root. And the root actually has two different parts. You have the bulb. So the bulb is going to be right around that intermembranous or intermediate or membranous part of the urethra. That's the bulb. Then you have these two little wings that are coming off. That's called the crus. So those are the two separate parts of the urethra. I mean of the penis. You have the root of the penis, which is made up of the crura and the bulb. So here you can see this would be. Go back to that picture one more time. Sorry, I know I'm driving you crazy. The bulb is around the urethra. So if you kind of extrapolate and think about that here, then you can see that you have the bulb of the urethra. Okay, I mean of the penis. All right, so the bulb of the penis is in this area here. All right, same thing here. All right. Let's see. So you could also say that this would be, you can't really see it as well, but that would be the crus. Doesn't really show up very well in the model. All right, then one more. I think I've got one or two more pictures. Another cutaway of the reproductive system. On this one, you can see the actual testis. We've cut it away. You can see the individual lobes. You can see the seminiferous tubules. You can see the epididymis. You can see the vas deferens going up and over. You can see the venous plexus and the arteries, the veins and the arteries. You can see the bladder here. Remember the seminal vesicle is going to be lateral. The ampulla is going to be medial right here. And there's the prostate. Again, I'm trying to give you as many options as I can because that way I don't surprise you on the test. again, we have the glands of the penis, your two erectile tissues. We'll see if you can figure out which one's which. One's around the urethra, one's not. Do you remember? Which one's around the urethra? Corpus spongiosum. Here is the testis inside the scrotum. Here is another view. This is the prostate. You have the bulbourethral gland right here. You have your ejaculatory duct. This is the bladder. I like this one because you can see the seminal vesicles on this one really well. So the seminal vesicles are going to be the lateral structures. Now we've cut the bladder in half. We're looking inside. So now that's going to be the medial structure. So that's actually the ampulla of the vas deferens, or the ductus deferens. All right. Okay. And the last thing I want to cover is going to be kind of sperm production and what that looks like. So we've taken a seminiferous tubule, we've cut it in half. We're looking, blowing that up, and this video is long, and I do apologize. I try not to make long videos. So we're looking at the outside. It's like a cutaway like here, so we've cut that away. And just as a quick review, remember in the male you have your stem cells, your spermatogonium. They're going to divide, and they're going to go through that process of meiosis, where they're going to divide until you wind up with 4 spermatotids. Excuse me. Those spermatotids will then become spermatozoa, where they'll be stored and then ejaculated. So when you're thinking about this, what you need to think is, as they're moving through this meiosis process, the first thing you're going to see, again, are going to be those stem cells. Well, the 2 cells that are near there, that first set, is going to be your A and B daughter cells. Then you're going to get your primary spermatocytes, your secondary spermatocytes, and your spermatotids. That's really easy to see on a picture. It's not so easy to see on a slide. So if I'm asking you to define these or to identify these particular formations of the sperm or different stages of development, I'm going to use this picture because, again, on the histology, it's kind of tough. You also can see these large yellow cells. These are your sustentacular cells, and so you can see that these sperm are kind of weaving their way between these cells. What's cool about these cells is they actually separate these developing sperm from the male body, so that because they're going to be a little bit different immunologically. If you think back to antigens, and so the male might actually recognize those as foreign. So they're actually separated from the blood barrier. There's like a barrier between the sperm and the blood, so that the male doesn't recognize them as foreign and destroy them. So that's pretty cool. Let's see. So be able to recognize the sustentacular cells and then these different stages in sperm formation. Now, if you actually have a histology slide, again, it's kind of hard to figure it out. This is a single seminiferous tubule. All right, this is the lumen, so the inside. And so your stem cells are going to be around the edges, okay? And just imagine they're going to be developing from primary, secondary to spermatotid as they move toward the lumen, okay? So really all you can tell on these slides, unless you're really good at histology, is going to be these stem cells around the outside. You can also see these large nuclei of the sustentacular cells, like here and here. But you can start to see these little comma-shaped heads, so you can start to see the spermatotids. And then the mature sperm, they're going to be in here. The spermatozoa are going to be, here's another lumen, you can start to see those here. I'm not going to ask you and say, hey, is that primary or secondary, because, you know, that just requires a little more knowledge than you guys have been exposed to. So for the actual histology slide, you need to be able to tell me, you know, that this is seminiferous tubule, that this is the lumen, that these little comma-shaped guys are spermatotids, and pretty much that's all I'm going to ask you. I do want you to know what the cells between the seminiferous tubules are, and those are those interstitial endocrine cells. So think back to the hormones, and so they're important. So you do need to recognize those. You also need to know the stages or parts of a sperm. So if you've learned about sperm formation, you know that the goal of the sperm is just to deliver a piece of DNA to the egg. And so as these sperm go through their development, they shed everything. They get rid of their cytoplasm and their Golgi and their ER and all that stuff. They just hold on to their mitochondria so they can make ATP, and they hold on to their DNA. So what I need you to know for the lab portion of the test is that where the mitochondria aggregate, we call that the midpiece, okay? The large tail or large flagellum, you need to know that part, and you need to know the head. And in the head, you have the nucleus, which is this purple thing, and you have a tip called the chromosome, which has the enzyme in it. All right, so I'm not going to test you on this part for the lab test. You just need to be able to identify the tail, the midpiece, and the head. Tell me what's in the midpiece and what's in the head, your chromosome and your nucleus. All right, and then last thing I want to say is as you're learning your anatomy and your physiology, you need to be thinking about the pathway that a sperm would take from development all the way through ejaculation and eventually to fertilization. So as you're learning about this development, start to kind of make you a note and make you a list of, okay, sperm develop in the seminiferous tubule, they would travel to the epididymis, they would travel through the vas deferens, where they would join the ejaculatory duct, go through the urethra, and then later, as we're learning about female reproduction, you need to be able to map where they would travel through the female till they reach the egg and encounter the egg and cause fertilization. So you might see some kind of a question about a sperm journey. It's kind of like tracing a drop of blood, so very similar. So start thinking about using your lecture notes and figuring out where the sperm, how they travel, what structures they encounter, what's being added in terms of semen as they travel this journey, and what those importances of those fluids are. All right, I think that's it, and I apologize. I try not to keep y'all too long, but it's a long lab. So thanks again, and I will see you for the female.